everyone, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, talking about Navi again, because this is technically the second time that I've had to make a video about it because we've had quite a big price change. Now, I'm going to show you up some slides because a lot of people are going to talk to you about the nitty-gritty about the card and the architecture and, you know, like clocks and all that kind of stuff. Whereas I just want to really talk to you about prices, do some performance, and we've got some really nice side-by-side gameplay for you to be able to look at as well. So we've got all of that sort of stuff that I need to kind of chat over and make time for, and then we can go na-na-na-na, and we can now talk about pricing. So originally, when I first made the video, when I wrote the written review, the price for the 5700 was going to be $389. And the price for the 5700XT was going to be $449. Now you're looking at $399 for the 5700XT, so a $50 price drop, and now $349 for the 5700, so a $40 price drop. The GBP price is roughly about the same sort of thing, but it's something that they are still kind of arguing about at the moment, because essentially what they do is they convert it into dollars and then they have to add 20% to it for the VAT, and then the e-tailers get to decide whether they take a little bit of their margin away and sell it a bit cheaper, or whether they put the price up and try and make some more money out of it. So the pricing on them has changed dramatically. But the other thing is basically when these cards were designed and everything and all of the pricing, essentially the 5700 was getting aimed at the 2060, but the 5700 XT was getting aimed at the 2070. But then this happened. Then that happened. So in case you didn't know and you've been living underneath a rock, the 2060 is basically a kind of skinny 2070. And the 2070S it's basically a skinny 2080. It's just cards that might not have quite hit the grade that they wanted to for the full fat cards. But the other thing is these have now got Samsung memory, so you're going to get none of the micron problems. And it also does kind of mean that what's going to happen is the pricing for the original 2060 and 2070s are going to come down until they run out of stock. And then you're probably going to find that you won't be able to get them again. It's something that I've been talking to vendors about, and they're horrifically miffed about it. But they're just going to kind of like go with it, try and get rid of the old stock, and then start selling these ones. So essentially what they've done with the product stack is we always thought, because of the pricing, that the cards were one version up more expensive than they should have been. So all they've done is they've kind of put them back down again. You now get a 2080 for 2070 pricing, you get a 2070 for 2060 pricing, and then I suppose when the 2080S comes out, that means you're going to get nigh on 2080 Ti performance for 2080 pricing. Sounds brilliant, but it was a little bit of a cluster monkey for AMD, because now it means they've had to drop their prices. So lots of chat, and this is why I've had to kind of like refilm it and everything. But what I'm going to do is I am going to show you the 5700 up against a 2060. Now we have got lots of graphs with all of the graphics cards in, and you can also go to the OC3D website to have a look at all the graphs and all the written review. We have tested all of these cards on our normal Intel based test rig, which that does mean that it's Pci Express 3, but at the end what I have done is I have run these two cards, and what I've done is I've done them on X470 and X570. So what that does mean, even though that they were both tested with 3900X, it does mean that these have been run with the same CPU, but one on Pci Express 3 and one on Pci Express 4, so that we can see if it does make any difference. But I'm going to show you the 5700 against the 2060. Then I'm also going to mix in between a 2060S as well. The 5700 XT we're going to show you against the 2070, and then we're going to mix in a 2070S. And this is going to be gameplay side by side, so you're going to be able to see temperatures, you're going to be able to see frames per second, and all of that sort of stuff. It's just so that you've got a really nice visual way to see what's going on. And then right at the end, we'll come back for a conclusion, and hopefully I'm not going to get all of the numbers mixed up like I have been for the last couple of days, because there is far too many numbers of 37s and 57s and 2070s and 2060s. My brain is mush. But game footage time. So we'll start with Deus, but don't forget what I said. You can go through to the OC3D website and we will show you graphs at the end as well. So this is your 2060 versus your RX 5700, and then pops up the 2060 Super. Lots of numbers to try and get through, but it does kind of give you an idea on what's going on. And the 5700 in this does put up a really good fight and quite often pulls a little bit in front of that 2060 Super. When we move into the 2070, you can see there again in Deus it actually does quite well at times. You can see it's a little bit in front of the 2070 here, so it puts up a valid fight. Mix in the Super and it gets a lot closer. Deus is definitely a game where it's not afraid of showing its strength, and it does show it's got some good performance available there for it, even against the Super cards. Mix them all in together and it does give you a nice good run through. It actually gives me a lot of chance and kind of like stuff to fill with my voice, which can be a little bit boring. But seeing all four on the screen, you get a good, fairly good spread of what's going on with the performance of the cards. Far Cry 5, we're going to whiz through this one really nice and quickly. The frames per second do show up quite well on this one. It's pretty damn good. 60 in the middle as well. You can see this does manage to pull in front there then. 2070 versus the XT. It's fairly close, to be honest, with the XT ever so slightly just in front. But again, on this game, mix the Super in and the Super does just take the lead, if by only just. Hitman, again, you can see that the RX is actually that little bit in front of the 2060, and I think that's kind of where AMD was hoping it was going to stay. And it is consistently just in front as well. But then you mix the Super in, and the Super, it takes the lead by, you know, a fair bit. And even kind of comparing the 60 to the 60 Super, you can see that there's quite a big gap there. 2070 versus the 5700 XT. Again, you can kind of see that it's trading places, but the 70 on this game does just about have the edge, which does then mean as soon as we mix the 2070 Super in, that it goes even further in front, although not as much as it has done with some of the other games in the past. The Super and the normal 2070 on this are actually quite closely matched. All four on the page, and it does give you a really nice kind of visual so you can see the spread of the performance with the basic cards, and this may help kind of you decide which one, each one of these is going to be possibly suitable for you. Okay, so some decent game footage there. You got some graphs. There are many more graphs on the OC3D website if you'd like to go through and dissect those. But to talk about these now, to be honest with you, when we first were catching rumours about these, we were hoping that the 5700 XT was going to be 2080 kind of performance for around 400 quid, which sound, at the time it was like, oh, it's not going to be 2080 Ti kind of performance, it's not going to be that great. But then you think to yourself, well, 2080 is quite good, and if the pricing's strong, then it does give the kind of volume end of the market something to look forward to. But then it came down to 2070. Now, having 2070 and 2060 kind of performance isn't such a bad thing. But when they first released the pricing, basically what happened is we got to test them Loads of people said the prices were too expensive, and then AMD pulled the prices back. Whether that was planned all along so that they looked like the good people, I don't really know. But with these, it wasn't as good as we wanted, and it is a bit of a mediocre kind of launch because there is no real grunt. But if you're in the market for spending, let's face it, between £300 and £400 on a graphics card, they did at first with the 2060 and the 2070 actually were going to mix the market up a little bit. But then with the inclusion of these, it just made life really kind of difficult. Because like I said, essentially what they've redone is rebranded a 2080 and a 2070, moved the product stack back a little bit and given you the 2060 Super and the 2070 Super. So, you know, that's kind of that out the way. We'll focus on these. In the kind of middle, kind of lower end of the market, they're very much welcomed, and it's the place where a lot of the cards are going to get sold as well. I will say though that something inside me still says they need to be another kind of £25 to £35 at least cheaper, because at the moment these are the reference cards, and we know that we're then going to get aftermarket cards, which means the price is genuinely going to go up because they have to put more expensive coolers on and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm personally saying that I don't think they're quite cheap enough. If you could get, let's say for argument's sake, a Gigabyte Windforce or a Strix or something like that for this sort of money now, so under £400 for both, I think you'd be onto an absolute winner. But what you do have to remember, and this is with a very level-headed hat on, is that with these they do have quite a lot going for them, really. Yes, I know a lot of you are going to say about ray tracing and DLSS doesn't matter, and for those of you, then brilliant, go out and, you know, grab yourself one of these, whether it's a blower version like this or whether you get an aftermarket one. But if you're one of those kind of guys that likes, you know, new tech and all that, so these do have a lot more kind of shiny stuff on them, whereas these, I genuinely feel like these would have been great if they were launched about 18 months or maybe even a year ago. They would have done really, really well at those kind of prices and given some real, you know, viable competition. It's just now they just still feel a bit kind of dated, and, you know, there's no big wow about them. It's genuinely, the way I feel is that AMD kind of do these so that they still have some kind of presence in the market, and it's almost like they're just a token gesture to the AMD people out there, people that just don't want to buy the green team cards, and that's all well and good, but we kind of need, you know, some big strides forward to drive the market and, you know, drive competition, and they're just not doing that at the moment. I mean, let's face it, Nvidia did this, and then AMD had no choice but to just knock prices back that little bit, which is going to be cutting their profit margin, and it then leads you to wonder whether the vendors are going to have enough margin in, you know, to be able to make cards, you know, aftermarket cards that little bit cheaper, or whether it will be like Radeon 7 where you never really see, let's face it, have you ever seen a Radeon 7 without that cooler on it? You know, are we actually going to see a lot of these in the market? I don't know, and only time is going to tell. So they do give us, you know, an option in the cheaper end of the market, you know, 350 quid, £400. You know, it's great. You've got options, you've got choice if you don't want to go green. I just think if they were going to be a really big seller, and if they were going to do really well and mix up the market, I think we would need, you know, decent vendor cards at those sort of prices as well. The other thing I'll say is, because I've not really spoken about it here, if you had clicked through to the website, you would have found out, but the fan profiles on them just weren't that great. There was an issue with the driver to start off with, but even at stock, we were getting very, very hot temperatures. AMD were happy with them running at 90 degrees, which, you know, for the silicon side of it, that's fine, but when you consider that the competition was like 80 degrees with utterly silent, and, you know, these just weren't that quiet. So the 7nm side of it didn't do that well. And the thing that I haven't mentioned to you yet was Pci Express 3 versus Pci Express 4. And I'm going to try and stand out the way so that the graphs can kind of pop up. PCI Express 4, the whole kind of thing that, you know, the first PCI Express 4 graphics cards, it's all a load of tosh. They do not get any extra, you know, performance or anything from them being on PCI Express 4. They've just not got enough throughput to be able to even saturate PCI Express 3. So, I mean, you think about the 2080 Ti on PCI Express 3, these are significantly slower than a 2080 Ti, but the whole PCI Express 4 graphics card is a bit of a gimmick, and it just wasn't needed. And I think they only kind of really did it to try and help the 570 sales, X570 sales, and it didn't matter whether we were testing on PCI Express 3 or PCI Express 4, because by changing the CPU and then moving over and putting it onto X470, it wasn't a PCI Express 4 board, and it didn't really make a blind bit of difference. So if you're one of those guys that was worried about was it going to get downgraded by you putting it on an older system, it's not going to, you know, you're not going to be hampering yourself any more than the spec of your system was already by putting on PCI Express 3 or anything like that with your specific CPU. And you know that was it really. So long story short, it is a bit of an underwhelming launch. I was one of the people that was just so hoping that they were going to be that little bit quicker. But now, where we know where the performance is, I just hope, and I know it's not going to happen because we've already had it, but they do need to be a little bit cheaper now. It's definitely, you know, they've got a place in the market for sure. It's great to have some more performance there. You've essentially got, you know, cheaper than RX 64 kind of performance with a slightly, you know, less heat and all of that sort of stuff. But it's, yeah, it's a bit of a tough one, really. I think the disappointment in my voice should say enough. They're great little cards, though. You know, if you're looking for something different, you're looking for a viable, you know, other option. If you're an AMD fan, great. But there's just nothing there that's really going to light the market up. So you get 2060/2070 beating performance, but it gets a little bit more confusing when you start talking about the supers. If they can get the price down, then I can see them being, like I said, a decent viable option. But if you're already on like Radeon 7 or something like that, then, you know, I don't really think that you should worry about upgrading just yet. And if you think about getting the 3900X or the 3700X, for example, or any of the 3000 series GPUs, and you think that you need to get one of these because it's PCI Express 4, you don't. You can run any of the AMD cards, for example, or any of the green cards, and you're not going to have to worry about that sort of thing. To be honest with you, PCI Express 4, at the moment at least, at the time of making this video, is a bit of a flash in the pan. And that is, I think it's just that little bit too early. It might be something to look at later on, again in the future. But if you go and have a look at my main review for the 3700X and the 3900X, I actually didn't get a performance drop by running one of the new 3000 series CPUs, but with an X470 board and a PCI Express 4 hard drive. I didn't get any, you know, issues with that. So it's a bit of a confusing one. There's lots of testing and stuff that we need to do at the moment, do a lot more digging. But the long and short of it is, they're not quite as good as we wanted. And now, because we know what the performance is like, they're still, I would say, not quite cheap enough to kind of make anyone really worry about anything. Maybe if NVIDIA hadn't have released the supers, it might have been a little bit better, but they have done, and this is what we're left with. But I genuinely wish these had been launched a year ago, because they would have made a little bit more of a ripple in the pond if they had been. But just now, it's just it's a little bit too late again. So they're really good. I don't want to seem too negative about it. It's not the fact I'm trying to be negative about the cards. It's just more frustration stroke a little bit of disappointment on my part, because I had hoped for that little bit more, because I really wanted some strong AMD GPU performance back. Thank Lord alive, though, if you've not seen it, go and watch my 3700X and 3900X CPU review, because it's totally different when we start talking about Ryzen 3000. Ryzen 3000 is all thumbs, all big smiles, and Intel running off to the hills crying because AMD in that regard are very much back. So let's just hope that maybe next gen or the gen after, the Radeon side of things will have Nvidia running off to the hills as well. And Lord, do I hope that's going to happen. Anyway, for now at least, this has been the tiniest one. Filming all this all over again, out.